Yeah, so right now, to move this right along, the next speaker is Sonia Barrett, and I brought her along for her work on a documentary film she produced and did herself called The Business of Disease. And I don't want to take up too much time. She'll just get into the information. So Sonia, just come on down, give her a great hand. Keep going, keep going. She's still walking. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
Thanks.
All right, Sonia, you got this right here. You good?
All right, yes,
All right,
thanks. Yes, my normal attire is they're flip-flops, but they're $100 flip-flops. So shoes, yes, it's a very unusual thing for my feet. But anyway, for this occasion and for all of you, I'm wearing shoes. Anyway, thank you so much, Ivan, for inviting me here and to be able to see all these wonderful faces. Thank you all for coming out. Some of you are familiar with my work, and maybe a lot of you probably are not. Anyway, Ivan mentioned the film that I did. It's called The Business of Disease. I'm going to be talking about more than that, but the film is called The Business of Disease, and my reason for creating the film in the first place was based on one day I just really got tired of going to the store and being asked about donating to breast cancer. Now, I want to explain this so as to, make sure nobody is offended and they understand where I'm coming from. The pink ribbon, the whole idea of the pink ribbon, I started to wonder what was this doing to our minds, because our first language is symbols. And so I started to wonder, well, how are we interpreting this? And realized that this was really, really huge. So the question was, is it being marketed, or what? Running for a cure, all of that. So that's kind of where I started with this, and I didn't mean to make a feature film. It was sort of an accident. I thought I was going to make a YouTube video, and so I contacted some really awesome minds. I wanted it to come from the place of science, so there were neuroscientists involved because I wanted to really explore on a much deeper level what was going on. And so that's kind of how it evolved, into this bigger film that is now, it was launched actually 2014 or 15 in New York and Los Angeles. It ran in both places for a week, and it's now digital and some television platforms that it's available, and I have hard copies. But anyway, so that was my interesting thing with it, and just watching people and how they responded to all of this, and the fear that was being generated, and the celebrities that were being used to promote not just breast cancer, but cancer and all illnesses. Then I also wanted to explore it from the emotional aspect, which Western medicine doesn't really do. They're trying to sort of do that now when you hear some of the commercials, but in a way they're sort of just jumping on the bandwagon of that. But the fact is that health comes from a much deeper place. It comes from an emotional space, from a core beliefs about ourselves, core situations, childhood predicaments, relationship issues, because we are simple but complex beings. And so to realize that this is coming from a much bigger place, as opposed to when you go to the doctor and he cuts something out and patches you up, which is a lot of what has gone on. And going back to the idea of breast cancer, and so women are removing healthy breasts, simply just in case. And you have to wonder, what is that about? So there's also a very long article that I wrote called The Marketing of Breast Cancer, the Pink Ribbon Agenda, which you can find on the website, or if you put it into Google, people have posted it all over. And even women who have had breast cancer said, God, I wish I had seen this article, because what you're saying is true. There was a lot of fear. Now, why remove the breast? And then you start looking at what does the breast represent? The breast represents what? Nurturing, you know, the mother feeds the baby with the breast. The bosom is nurturing. When you look at our society in terms of women and, you know, who's where, third-class citizens, and doctors, mainly the male doctors, saying, you know, it's okay to go ahead and do that. Same thing with removing your womb. It's okay. You've had children. They said this to my sister. You don't really need it. These aren't like car parts. These are parts. And so the idea is to sort of neutralize or to reduce the necessity of these body parts, not just the breast, but these organs, to reduce the necessity, when we're talking about the woman and the breast, to reduce it to, it's not such a big deal because then, you know, yes, you can have surgery, you can do all of that. That is fine if you've had cancer and you have to do that. But what I'm trying to show you is the logic behind it and the projection that is being offered not just to women, but to the husbands, to the sons, to the daughters. And when you see Pink Ribbon Barbie, when you get on the site, NFL site, they've got, you know, all the pink stuff. And then you have Pink Ribbon Barbie, you know. What is that about? The toilet paper with pink ribbons all over it. You have to understand how your brain works, how it takes it all in, how it interprets that. So you think that you are working on preventive, but you're actually putting yourself in a state of fear. And a lot of the women that have had breast cancer, and when you look at the emotional aspect of it, they realize this is also a science. It's a lot of times when we don't give to ourselves, when we do not nurture ourselves, when we're giving out so much. This is all about energy. This is not just me talking and saying woo-woo words. No, everything that we are and everything that is it's all energy-based. We're talking frequencies. So the emotions then, what? They measure a frequency. And how that interprets in your body, because we're what? We process emotions, electrochemical impulses, right? So how does that process in the body? So if we take it all, because everything I do, I take it out of the woo-woo space. So I bring some science in because I'm not about woo-woo. I'm all about looking at things as they are. Don't give me something up in the air. Let me see so I can process this and determine what I want for myself or my daughter, my granddaughters. And so to look at that and to realize that this is how the body works from an emotional standpoint, it is always processing our feelings, our emotions, and the frequency of that, what that measures. And the body, of course, has its own frequency that it is vibrating at. And so when that's a little out of balance, that's where the disease or the illness comes in. If we just take it to that simple state, it is not about the identity so much of the disease, which is what we do. We identify with the disease. You own the disease. It's not about owning the disease. It's about realizing I'm out of balance, and this is a signal. My body is signaling me. What does it want? But we don't do that because all of the commercials and everything out there give you the name simply because of what they're able to give you, the pharmaceutical companies. So now you have a name. Not only do you have a name, but you have all of the things that supposedly will come along with that name. So you have a series of expectations of what you should be experiencing. So that's why many times when people go to the doctor and they get a diagnosis and they're shocked because they felt fine. But after that, now you know that you've got this thing, and now you know all of what goes with it. Suddenly you start developing symptoms. The mind is a very interesting place. It's a very tricky place, and the brain and the communication process with the whole body, the whole being, all the cells. And I think that's so important for us to understand. And I've known people who weren't necessarily versed in a deep level of understanding, but one woman in particular, and I always thought it was so fascinating. I was working with her some years ago, and she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, must have said that it looks like it could be a lump, and she came back, and she said, you know what? She says, you know what? I don't even have time to have cancer. I have stuff to do. And you know what? It's so true, though, because if we go to levels of, which that's not why I was invited today, to get into quantum physics and all of that, but when we look at how everything is processed, you have to realize that you have to give your permission for so much stuff. You don't realize that you do, but you have to give permission for a whole lot of things. Now, your body may go ahead and give you symptoms, but it doesn't mean you have to own it. That doesn't mean also that you do not do something about it. You're going to pay attention to the signal, and you're going to find out what it is that the body needs. You're also going to pay attention to what it is that I am doing in this moment. What have I been doing? What is my life right now? What am I feeling? Am I happy? Am I happy in this relationship that I've been in forever? You're going to take into account all of who you are. That's very important, because your body is responding to all of who you are, who you have been, what you think about yourself, what you think about your life, the things you do not say to anybody else, but they're there. Well, your body eventually wants to throw that up. It's anchoring you. And what happens when that happens? It's going to affect the level of oxygen that the cells are getting. And so your thoughts and how you feel can actually make the body extremely acid. And it's that acidity that sets the stage for disease. So we need to understand the levels and the layers by which we are designed and we operate. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing that I want to address is my work, which tends to be completely generally off the charts of a lot of what gets presented. But when I started to look at who we are as human beings, the fact is you realize that everything about who you think you are, not just who you think you are, but just collectively, and the idea of what a human being is supposed to be, has been designed by someone else. Whether it be thousands of years back or millions of years back, it doesn't matter. It all became part of the human genetics. It all became part of the human gene pool, your DNA, in terms of who we think we are and what we think we are, which is what is scary for people, is what are we? Who are we? That is very scary. And I say scary because we're dealing with technology now, and transhumanism and robots and AI and people going, well, yeah, but they don't have a soul. They're not, there's not consciousness there. The reason why we get like that is because we get nervous that we are being reduced to less than we think we are. This is why we get nervous. We go, yeah, but they don't have a soul. Well, you don't even know what a soul is. You don't know what a soul is. You don't know what consciousness is. It doesn't matter. All the stuff that people have they've said about consciousness, and everybody puts it in this woo-woo space also, in terms of what consciousness is or what a soul is. Yes, in my book, The Holographic Canvas, came out 10 years ago, I referred to the soul as a holographic record keeper. And a lot of the technology, a lot of what I was speaking about 10 years ago is starting to become a bit more mainstream in terms of science. But at that time, when I was looking at the technology of human existence, that's what I was doing. I was looking at it from a technological standpoint, an advanced technology. Again, my favorite word, woo-woo. I needed to not be in that place. I needed to see. That's the way I focus. I want to see. I don't want all the fluffy, feel-good, bedtime story stuff. I want to know, what is this? What am I in? And what does this have to do with the health aspect? It has everything to do with the health aspect. Because if you don't know who or what you are, or you're not even open to that, or you're terrified, then you're caught in that matrix, that game. And this is indeed a game. Some of you are familiar with me referring to it as a game. Some people, it's not a game. Which is where we get the idea of creating games from. Why we like to play games, why we like to compete, because we are in the largest game ever. We're not just talking about the human game. There's a human aspect of it, the human game. But even the idea of what we think the cosmos are, and the planets, and the UFOs, and all of those other aspects of ourselves that we are interested in. How do you know that you're not just simply part of one giant game experience that is only that particular giant game experience, but then there are other aspects beyond what we have been so focused on? Well, this is where my work comes in. As I say, it's kind of off the charts because I've left, they say Elvis have left the building. I left a long time ago because I needed to see that, well, perhaps the planets and everything are really just all still part of one big giant game structure. So I bring this up because I'm trying to give you an idea as to, where my work comes from. Because with health and the human design, in order to make changes for yourself, in order to make those kinds of changes that will affect you in a profound way, you need to understand that your body is one hell of a massive piece of technology. And that this body is not who you are. And that is what the fear is because all of what we do is we identify the totality of who we are as these vehicles. That's why we get so upset and offended, like, okay, well, no, the robots can't, they can't do this because, they don't have a soul and they have consciousness. You can only be in fear when you have identified yourself completely as this darn character you play. That's all it is. You play a role, and that character happens to be operating in this technology, in this vehicle. I'm not this vehicle, but this vehicle is a result of, it's a lower vibration of what I am, which cannot be contained in a form, which is what everybody is. You're just way beyond that form. So when you start to see that and you get that, you are no longer so affected by a lot of what goes on and the things that can actually impact the body, right? The things that can impact the body, going back again, I'm circling back a little bit to the health aspect. How do you beat all of what's coming at you, the chemtrails and all of that stuff? Well, obviously you need your immune system, the immune support, your immune system, your defense system. Now, even using the word system, right? The technology of this vehicle, the immune system of this vehicle is what? Affected by the electrochemical impulses, which is your emotions. Am I making sense? Okay, so you're looking now at the technology. So you step away, the observer aspect of yourself, because you're not all completely here. You just identify yourself as, this is what I'm going through, this is what, well, I'm always saying in workshops, well, who's going through that? This is how people get pulled out of the identity. I'm like, well, who's going through that? And they go, oh yeah, that's right, huh? If you step back and then you can observe, you can see what is going on in terms of the body. The body is not you per se, but it is the vehicle. That gives you an opportunity to be able to fix it a lot easier, right? If you don't think you're your car like that, you can step back and you can fix it. But when you're in the issue, when you're in it, and when we're in our character, we're in it to win it, as they say. We are completely invested in it. You cannot fix it. You feel, pain. Oh my God, I'm in pain. I'm in pain. You can't fix anything. But if you can step back and you see, wow, okay, this is my vehicle, this is some seriously advanced technology, and these are the malfunctions that are going on at this time. Okay, malfunction. What is the emotional, all this other stuff that's being processed? Okay, I get it with my environment, but the body can actually supersede anything that comes at it. But it doesn't now because the body is not really turned on. The body runs on auto. It is running on an automated system, and that automated system refers to information, pre-programmed information, collective human history, information of your past, things that happened to you in the past, I guess we say our subconscious mind. It runs off of that information. And that's why it's very hard to step away and fix anything, because you're constantly being looped back into it. Your future is based on your past. You're never present. You're in the past of what happened, and then from that, you take that information and you try to solve situations in the future. And then you actually create situations in the future. So there's this incredible science involved, and I think for me, being able to step back and to look at the fact that everything we're dealing with is different levels of different kinds of technology. Nonetheless, everything is mimicking a bigger technology. Now we bring it to, of course, because people had a hard time even going into that space, and this is where religion comes in. There's, a God, you have to have somebody there like that in people's minds. You have to have someone there that's totally responsible for everything that you do and what's going on, because you don't know. And you do the same thing with government, So the behavior is repeated over and over in many different ways. Government does the same kind of performance. So yeah, we get upset because government doesn't provide us with what we think government should provide us with. But at the same time, you have to remember, one, we're in this giant matrix, and then we're in this other little matrix, which is the one that's run by the system, the governmental system, and sort of regulates everything to do with these bodies and so on. And so you start looking at it from that standpoint, and when you start looking at it from that standpoint, you're starting more and more to be able to step back and to make essential changes as you go along in your life. Am I making sense? Okay. So I wanted to make sure that I presented the idea of health and who you are, and the idea of who do you think you are, the idea of identity, the fact that you are playing a role. It's a character. Everything that you think about yourself, I don't care if you're a doctor or a lawyer, I don't care what you are, you're playing a character. You're playing a role, and you have fully identified with that role. Now, this is not good or bad, right or wrong. This is just a realization that, wait a second, I'm just playing this role. A necessary thing, because the human game requires that we come in and that we experience every potential there is to be a human being, good, bad, and indifferent. Everything about being a human. It's a game where it's like, okay, what would that look like to be a human being? Okay, well, go in and be that. And on one level, there's some rules that have been set, societal rules in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. And why do they do that? They do it because there's always a fear of the human, because there's that wild animal side, there's all that. Something has to curtail it, because we can get all kinds of crazy. And we do, right? So you've got those rules that are in place to ensure, which it's not working very well, it's supposed to ensure that we don't become unraveled, but that's not working. So people are unraveling more. So why are people unraveling more? Why are people becoming so unraveled? Now, we can have many reasons that we can, put together. We have the conspiratorial aspect, which is very true. It's not conspiracy because it's a layered game in terms of the things that are being done, which then support people unraveling in that manner. But I also think that we are in a time where we have an opportunity to begin to step up, to go through these deep levels of evolution. And there's a part of us in the general, I think, human collective that wants to step up and be more, to be more of what we are. But our society is not set up for that. It's not prepared for that. So we don't know how to deal with that. Even people who are schizophrenic, living in multiple worlds, we're all schizophrenic, I want to tell you. We are all multiple personalities. We're all multiple personalities. So there's so many things about ourselves that we just don't see. And you have to start observing. You have to start being able to look on and to see, you know, the different parts of you that show up. Well, these are all the things that we try to keep on the wraps to keep everybody, there's a sameness that becomes necessary. Now, does that have to be this way all the time? No, it does not. But all of these rules and regulations are there in place, just like astrology, to assist the sleeping human. The human who is completely unaware of the game itself and what's possible. And so you have that in place, again, astrology. You have those things in place as a guidance system. But when we begin to awaken on these profound levels, you find that you begin to step beyond all of that. You don't have to worry about being this thing or that thing or being a killer or being... It has nothing to do with whether it's a right thing or a wrong thing. It becomes minuscule. It becomes so... I can't even think of the word. Whatever word is beyond minuscule. It becomes so insignificant to who you are because you're stepping up into a larger version of yourself, which is actually what people are looking at when they're talking about ascension, things like that. You're always ascending. You're ascending into yourself, I say. You're ascending into greater levels of yourself. I take it all out of the woo there too. You're ascending into just greater levels of yourself. That's evolution. You're evolving yourself, and you don't have to wait for the collective to evolve. That's another myth. The individual has every right to evolve into greater levels of one's self. Why is that? Because the individual represents the whole. Like the single cell of a plant, the history of the entire plant is in that cell. So you already represent the whole. So yes, you can freely, without a group, go ahead and whatever you're feeling, and you allow yourself to expand. You don't have to wait for anybody to do anything. And there are people doing it all the time. You might not know them and who they are, but there are people doing it all the time. So I'm going to circle back once again to the idea that who we are has been designed and created for us. We, as I said, have an idea of what we think the world is and what human beings are. But how do you know that all you see and experience is a sliver of what you consider the world to be and all of human beings? Is it really all of human? What if there's a whole other set of human beings that are living in a completely different perspective than the one that we supposedly are collectively experiencing? And when I refer to that, I refer to that from the birth to death perspective. And I won't get crazy on that right now. He's looking at me because I get into the whole thing of, do we really need to die? So if anybody's interested in my work, go check it out because it goes real into all of that. But these are questions that, to me, you've got to ask. You've got to, if you are interested in evolving yourself, if you are interested in being more than the prescribed idea of who you are and what it is to be. I won't even just say be a human, to be. If you are interested in being more, then definitely these are questions to be asked. And when you start asking those questions, what happens? The brain gets that information. Let me drink some water. the brain gets that message. And the brain says, oh, it looks like we might be changing the pattern of reality, because everybody's brain has a pattern of what reality is supposed to look like. Excuse me. Based on all the information that you have, your brain has a blueprint of what collective reality is supposed to be and what your individual reality is supposed to be, and that's what you live by. You live from this pattern. So your brain, excuse me, has to receive messages of the change. It just takes its information from you. It takes the information from the thoughts that are coming in, and the thoughts come in through the top of the head, through the ventricles and the brain, and comes in and floods the entire, comes into the spinal fluid and bathes all the cells. All that information is always constantly coming in. But what are the thoughts that are coming in? What is the information that's coming in? Well, the information that's going to come in is going to be only limited to the perception, the belief system and the perception that you have and the understanding that you have of reality and who you think you are. Therefore, it keeps that pattern that you have of what reality or human life is supposed to look like, it keeps that pattern in place. Until you start asking these profound questions. You start asking these profound questions, the brain says, wow, okay, so it looks like this is a request or giving me permission to remove some of that filter. Because the brain sees everything. But you have to remember, it filters reality. It filters it according to the perception and the belief system. That's its job, is to filter and to give you only what you can perceive and believe and accept as a possibility. When the more that filter is removed, the more you start to question, is the more things it starts to remove more of it. But nothing is hidden from us. Make no mistake, there is nothing that is hidden from us. We can only see according to what we can accept as a possibility. That's all. It's not crazy. This whole thing, again, it's a massive technology. And this design, this vehicle is set up like that to work in that manner according to what that individual who runs this, who owns this, is ready to do. So, yes, now I'm jumping ahead again to something else. Because I'm trying to throw in a bunch of little things in here. But this is why you're seeing so many of these superhuman movies coming, these films. This is the very reason, because in human beings, there is a core realization that there is something more. I can be more. I can be more. Somewhere in there it says that. And so these movies and these TV shows, they're triggering human beings for this potential expansion and evolution. Those who are up for it, those who are ready for it, those who are coming in, it's preparing the human mind for what we define as superhuman abilities, which is really just natural abilities. But we had to do this thing we call being a limited human. We had to just do this thing. So this is not like we go, oh, well, I can't believe they did this to us. No, that's part of the game, right? It's just all part of the game. You had to be the most limited expression as possible. Because what does everybody say? Oh, everything is possible. That's so much bull, because people don't really believe that. They go, we just live in an ocean of possibilities, just not that possibility. Just not that. Well, just don't do it that way. Just, if you do it this way, then everything's possible. And it's not that. If everything is possible, and if all that we live, we live in this ocean of possibilities, doesn't that then mean that everything that we have dealt with and experienced as human beings had to be? Wouldn't that then mean that that's a tough one for people to swallow? Because then they go, well, for those people who are religious, they go, well, then why would God do that? Well, how can you say God is everything, and then you say, well, how did God do that? Because if God is everything, then that means everything is going to be. It's as simple as that. That means everything is. Well, how is everything allowed? Because you have free will. Everything is allowed. Every darn thing is allowed. The things you can think of, things you cannot even think of, it is all allowed. Now, besides it being allowed, you then have the opportunity to wake up and to evolve beyond it. That's really ultimately the end game of this, is the evolution beyond certain experiences. Not because it's a good or a bad thing, and some people hate when you say that, but if we understand this giant human experience, then, and we say everything is, we just live in an ocean of possibilities, then you get it. Then you get why that person has done what that person has done, or they've experienced what they've experienced. And you get to evolve from those experiences. Sure, I've had some serious experiences in my life, as we all have, but I've had some serious ones. And those experiences brought me to this moment. It was the questioning of my life. It was a questioning of a 14-year abusive marriage. Physically abusive marriage. It was a Lifetime Channel experience, I like to say, that I can now laugh at, because I'm not owned by it. But that experience and running away from that experience made me question, what is this thing back in 1992? What is this thing we call life? What the hell was that? And so I set out on my own, diligently, knew nothing about metaphysics, not know the word metaphysics, did not know anything about any idea of quantum physics, had no knowledge, don't know how to meditate. On my own, diligently, I set out to do this thing that I did not know what I was doing, until one day I had this profound breakthrough in the breath on my own. And it forever changed me, opened me up, to the backdrop of all of this. That's the only way I can explain it. I knew that there was more beyond what I was seeing and experiencing. I knew that there was more, and I needed to penetrate that veil. At the time, without books or guru or anybody to guide me, and I did read Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb at the time, Dancing in the Light, because I was like, oh, okay, well, it seems like there are people out there like this, questioning. And I looked at the Bible another time. I still have it all marked up. I'm like trying to see, did I miss something? And so I put it all aside and decided I was going to try to make this happen. So that's what I did. I put it aside. And so now I can honestly say to people that everybody has access to everything. There is not a select few. There is nobody that is greater than you in here. Nobody's speaking at this conference. There's nobody. What we provide probably is information that may trigger. Information where you may say, you know what, that confirms what I was feeling. Because I get people that say that all the time. Because we find that we need permission. We need permission to have a perception that seems to be outside the box. Well, because I left that a long time ago, I don't care how people perceive me. I don't care. Because you know what? Because I realize it's just human beings. Just people. It don't even matter. It don't even matter what you think. Because it's all a game. What you think is just a game too anyway. It doesn't even matter. So you come back to all of that, and to me, it's the most freeing thing. And I raised my children, as I was discovering, I was sharing that information with them. And for those of you who have children, that's what you do. You gradually share that information with them so that it becomes part of them. And then I used to talk to them when they were sleeping. I would go in and I would tell them, how amazing they were. And at the time, I would tell them that they were God. They'd be sleeping. I'm like, you're God. So this is how we begin to create the kind of change. The kind of change that we are looking for is to realize that this end game is about a profound evolution that every human being has the opportunity to experience. And that evolution will forever change us. And I'm not talking about, transhumanism is going to be there. See, I don't have a problem with any of that. I just know what I'm doing. I'm activating this technology. That's what I'm doing. And that's what you have to know. Now, it's going to serve its purpose for people who are not there yet with needing to, have limbs and different things. But the fact is that there's research. They know we can grow limbs and all of that. All that stuff is not going to be science fiction soon. That's why we are here now. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing, because it's preparing you to be able to get your brain to go, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. Stem cells to get the information and to go, oh, okay, we're going to become more than just, a tissue or this or that. We're going to be able to grow back limbs. And you see dentistry, stem cell, they're showing that now. That's the dentistry coming, where you can grow back your teeth. So this is where we're at, and to be able to keep that in mind as you go through this game, this life, this experience, is to realize how profound you are. And don't let them sell you all this crap about aging. By the time if you're between the ages of 40 and 80, they don't give you past 80. It's like they're reminding you, remember, you're supposed to die because, remember, you got to die by a certain time because there's overpopulation. There's a method to their madness. And, for me, yes, I was sharing with her, yes, I am on the closer end of 60. So, this is all, and this is me, this is my face, this is understanding the science of who you are, what you are, and you leave that program. You leave that program that's been given to all of us that keeps being on billboards and all over the place, reminding you to die. You gotta die, you gotta die. Too many people on the planet, you gotta go. And so, yes, so we get sold all of this with our health, and just watching the commercials, and my husband, he just cracks up because he watches me cracking up. The guy that's on one medication and he's cutting the lawn and he's just like dancing all over the place because he feels so good because he's on that medication. I'm like, this is like... the commercial? I'm like, damn, it's like all of us should get that then. He's like so happy. It's like, I don't have what he has, but, darn, it's working for him. But it's like to me, it's in a way it's insulting because they bank on the stupidity in their minds and how gullible people are. But what the issue is, the reason why people are gullible is because people are desperate. They're desperate to feel better. Whether it be emotionally or physically, they're desperate to feel something else other than this oppressive feeling that they've been feeling with maybe their body or their mind. And the marketing companies, they take advantage of all of that. And so we might say, well, how do we go out and we fix things? I'm not out to change the world. Because what I realize is the whole world, I don't even know what the whole world looks like. Let me throw that in. I like to throw that into people. You don't know what the whole world looks like. All you know is pictures and images and videos of what the world is. That's the truth. The only thing you know about the world is what you're experiencing in this room. Not even outside this room. You don't know until you go outside the room. The world is your immediate experience. Everything else, that's why the news works. That's why they have to keep reminding you of what the world is supposed to be. They keep showing you videos and pictures and images. That's all. That's the only thing you know about the whole world. We don't know what the whole world is. Is the whole world, as they say, this many people? Or is it more people? You'll be surprised how the brain works and takes in this information and creates models, ideas for us of what things are supposed to look like forms a pattern based on the information. And the brain does what? The brain looks for patterns. That's how it works. It looks for patterns all the time, all around, looks for patterns. That's what it does. So I like to leave people, I have a little bit of time, but I like to leave people with that realization, is just to really get that you don't know what the world really looks like. It's just information that is brought to you all the time. Now, how am I responding? That's the question. One of the things that I realize that they do with the news, when there's a tragedy, and they say that, the reason why they single out, they'll get one person. They did it with, was it in Vietnam? I forgot, because they do it with a lot of them, but they pick one person, right? And they tell you about that person's life and who they were, because they realize that the brain gets overwhelmed if you say 10,000 people die. It doesn't get, but if they give you one person, that one person represents everybody else, and then then you're emotionally engaged. That's why they do it. That's why they identify maybe 2 or 3 people as well, and they tell you about their lives, because they need to bring you in emotionally into the story. Now, I really feel that these emotions they're harnessed. Somehow they're harnessing them. So somebody's harnessing this stuff, which is why fear works so well. They have to bring you in, and then there's a collective same or similar response, right? Because that's the idea, is to trigger a similar emotional response. That measures a frequency. Well, what is that? Well, how does that get used? I mean, it gets used. I mean, I can think of a bunch of different ways, but it's a realization. So can you objectively step back and observe and be sympathetic towards what is going on? But to bring yourself in where you're in tears, that is the idea, is to bring you in to that point. Half the stuff you don't even know what's true. You don't even know. But you're emotionally brought in, you're emotionally engaged, and how that fuel, how that is being used is the question. So it's learning to stand in your learning to stand in your own space and to realize, hey, one of the things, stop renting your body out. Stop renting yourself out. Stop renting out your mind. Stop renting out your body. That's what we do with health, the pharmaceutical companies and all these other people. You rent yourself out up here and you rent it here. But when you realize this is an incredible technology, and I'm in this incredible virtual experience, and it's an amazing game, and I have the opportunity to expand and be so much more beyond this game. I'm not saying you're completely ever out of the game, because reality is all about the next game, right? It's all about the next game. We just can't picture anything else, because this is all that we're familiar with. So we gravitate always to the familiar. You have no reference point for anything else. It's like people who are rich and people who are poor. That's why people win the lottery and they lose it. They've had no reference point for wealth. Their brain is not wired for it, so they lose it. But there are people who come into this life and the generational wealth, and they're wired for it. They could go do crazy stuff and then they generate that money again, billions of dollars. They're wired for it. So we have to, not that we can't be wired for it, but it's easier to do when you realize that this is the process. This is all an amazing science. This is just an incredible science that we're operating by. And whatever you hear today, you're going to hear a tremendous amount of information, and you take it all and you process it in whatever way is working for you, but to be sure that you don't leave yourself basking in fear, but realize that you've brought yourself here today for all of this information as part of your own personal evolution. And in some way, something that everybody says will add to that evolution that you're going to take yourself through. But you and only you can make that happen. You and only you are responsible for you. I don't care how many people tell you they're going to activate your chakras and do all of that. It doesn't matter. You and only you can activate yourself. It's like a fail-safe system. No matter how they break into your mind or whatever, still there's a part that they can't get to, because why? Because you're not really here. You're not really, the part of you is not in your body. So, 10 minutes. You got 10 minutes. I have 10 minutes? Yeah. Are you kidding me? All right, so I'm gonna, I can talk forever, but I know that they probably have not done that, but I just wanted to say, if anybody, for some reason, have a question that they, on anything I just said, and they want me to respond to it, oh.
When you say we don't have to die, do you mean?
Oh, you would go there, wouldn't you? You're right.
Do you mean in this body, or?
I'm very much so mean in this body. I very much so, and I'm not talking about living forever in this body either. I refer to life as being as morphing. Just as the in quantum physics, it's the wave and particle dance. We're appearing and disappearing all of the time anyway. We're a wave and we're a particle, right? Why not? The molecules can do anything. They can't, but everything is taking its instructions from the consciousness. And consciousness, when I say consciousness, I'm talking about the level of awareness of the individual and the perception and those things that we can accept as a possibility. But the body very much so can do anything. If you can grow limbs, and we can, we have telekinesis, telepathy, teleportation is next on the list. If you can teleport, which is coming, there are people that can, that means that what? The body has to then be vibrating at a rate of speed to allow that. On top of that, when we realize the idea of time, we realize not only the idea of time, but the fact that there really is no here nor there. That there's only now. That means everything truly exists in this one moment. That's really, truly how you're living, and why yogis can reach into the air and grab something from the air or whatever. These are all possibilities, because there is really no distance. Nothing is anywhere. But in order to have this experience, we have this idea of segmented moments, captured moments, in order to fulfill the human experience, which requires what we call time, the idea of time. But all of this is based on that idea, and really understanding that, yes, and I do workshops on this, and some of the people I was telling her look amazing. I have people who've been taking the workshops, and we've become just an incredible family, because I do yearly retreats. She turns 80 this year. You would never even imagine. When she discovered my work a few years back, and she got it, she goes, I got it, it's on. And so same with, everybody else that's been doing this for a while, it's on. They've left that space. They have left that space of that kind of measured time. And it is a science. It requires a whole lot more conversation, a whole lot more, because we've been doing this for years. It requires so many things that has to then be changed with you because of all the programming. It's the programming that we're up against. It's the programming that we're dealing with. That's what's causing us to age and decay, because it is expected. It is expected that when you reach a certain age, you are supposed to look a certain way. You're supposed to be a certain way. You're supposed to be falling apart. All of these things are just part of a program. No different than you program a computer. We are easily programmed. And so we run off of programs. And that's what I mean by the automated, that we're living on automated system. The body is living on automation. It's waiting for you to return, to get back in the driver's seat. And then when you do, which is what I've dealt with, sure, I've had to deal with the programs that are there coming up. But I realize that. And what people learn in the workshops is that when you look in the mirror, you're going to look in the mirror at times, and it's going to show you, you're going to go, oh my God, it looks like I'm getting older. No, what you must understand is that Some of that will have to run because it's there, but it changes. But you have to understand that's temporary. Not only that, the mirror is, I forgot how many seconds behind. So the image that you see in the mirror is always behind. It's never the current who you are. And so that's why you can look in the mirror now and a half an hour later you go back and you're like, damn, I look good. and then you can go back another time, you're like, what the hell happened? But all of who we want to be and everything that we would like to experience in our lives, it exists in the field of potentials. Why? Because of what I just said earlier, because there really is no time and every possibility really already is. You're just stepping into, we're not really creating anything, we are stepping into choice points, possibilities. That's all we do, we step into it. But you step into possibilities according to what you understand, and that's how you're making your choices. But everything potential is potentially there. It is there for the one who is ready to step into it. And that's what I mean by morphing. Doesn't mean you're going to stay in this body forever, but it doesn't mean decaying either. It means that you simply morph into whatever realm of awareness that you move into, and maybe move back and forth. I don't know. Are you going to be pure sound or pure light? These are things that we don't think about. You are already sound and light and color. You're made up of these components, these electromagnetic frequencies. You are already that, manifesting as this form, in this particular form. And it's to recognize all of that. Whoa, I'm already all of that anyway. So yes, it can all change.
If you have a lot of narcissism and like they're ascending, but would they ascend to?
No. Here's the thing. What you just mentioned. Oh, can you repeat the question? You forgot.
If a person is highly has a lot of Machiavellian traits and
Well, first of all, there's a reason, emotional reason why that person is where they are, what they're experiencing. So that's also a lot of programming that person has to deal with as well. That person would then need to go through whatever the process is for that person in evolving beyond those character traits, because that's really what it is. They're caught in their typecast. They're caught in those identities, as everybody else is caught in their identity. They're caught in those identities. Their brain has a pattern of those identities, and they keep being looped back into those patterns.
But a person who's chronically psychopathic will not even identify that.
Exactly. So they're not even thinking about the kind of expansion we're talking about. They're not even, they're still playing the human game on that level. I know it's hard to say that, but it is. They're still in that angle of the game, which means that they are still dealing with that, and this is not something on their agenda at this time. Their agenda is to fulfill everything that those identities require. Does that make sense? Yeah. You can't, we can't change anything until we see them and want to change it, but never to change it from a perspective of regret or good or bad. It's a realization. Wow, this is how I've been operating. Okay, I would like to operate differently. I would like to make those changes. That begins the process, not I'd like to make those changes, but man, I don't know if I can. I don't know. This is what people do, you see? And then it just sends that message more and more and more and more. So it has to come, I mean, there are other things involved, but it has to begin in that space. And the reason why I'm saying that is because in that moment, you are giving yourself permission to have the ways in which that change will happen to show up. Different things show up to begin to help you to make that change. But you have to give permission first, but it can't be permission with, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, because that's the law you're giving right there. This is what I've been. No regret, no whatever. This is what I've been. I've lived that. Now I'm choosing to expand beyond that. That in itself starts the ball rolling. So show me how. And you're saying that to the more expansive part of yourself. Show me. And things start to begin to change. I know this with patterns because, you know, we all have them, and the things I've lived in my life, and I had to come to a realization of my behavior. And then it took, I had to work at it once I saw the things that I needed to do to change the pattern, because that's all you're doing. You're always going to have a program. This thing is about being programmed. So it's not a matter of, oh, I don't want to be programmed. No, this vehicle is about programs. It's what you do with the programs, and it's a matter of evolving the program. You're always bringing evolution. If you usually drive down the street, you go to work and you go left all the time, then maybe you go left and then you take another little turn. You're always, you know what I mean? You're always having to keep changing. The brain requires you to do that. That's why they say seniors live longer when they're doing something new, because the brain requires that new neural pathways are constantly being created. It lets the brain know that I am planning to live. When we do nothing new, the brain, everything says, oh, let's prepare for shutdown. It's true. It starts to shut down. But you're proving by not just minuscule things, but by expansive things, the brain gets the message like, wow, okay, we're stepping into some greater territories here. That's its cue to keep the body going.
What do you think of in relation with
the AIs, we don't have that much time either for this, but the AIs, all of that, what's going on, because I did show an interview on Other World or something like is it Other World or something? Okay, I did that there. Well, all of that is happening, believe it or not, to actually push the human race forward. That's going to happen, but it is an opportunity to examine how that works and to relate it to the technology of you and go take it beyond that. It's going to be there because that's part of the human experience, the game experience. It's about evolution and expansion and trying our hand at everything. So don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it, but recognize it as, my opportunity to step it up. Your brain can do way more than any of the technology there is, but it's forcing us to take that next leap. Are we done? I think that's it. I thank you so much.